Welcome to another episode at Consciously Evolving Enterprises. I'm your host, as always, Mr. Ryan Dillon Brasington. I hope to bring this story to you with engaging attitude, and I hope you enjoy it. Um, as always, these stories are unscripted because they are based on true events, although don't let the truth get in the way of a good story. So anyway, two sisters, Sam and Neil, decide to go down to the city one night. They're going to have a few drinks in an alternative bar, as you do. Being a young person, wanting to celebrate life. Um, anyway, down in the city, a few drinks in. Sam and Neil, sitting at one of the alternative clubs, enjoying themselves. Exchanging good conversation about childhood or whatever it might be that they're talking about, and having a good D&M about past, present, and the past itself. Anyways, from nowhere, up pops this bearded fella, almost up from underneath the table itself. Bearded fella, hipster looking guy. He's got his man bun wearing, big beard, jolly looking fella, big red cheeks, tattooed arms. And he's kind of put both arms on the table, and he said, g'day ladies, how we doing? And they're like, oh, great. And, just another goof. Anyway, and Neil, being quite sharp to the tongue, and said, what do you want, mate? And he's kind of said, I want to kind of, join you ladies for a conversation. It looks like you guys are having a good time. I just want to sit down and, have a good time as well. Anyways, and they're kind of like, oh, great. And Sam's kind of, going, well, we'll give this fella a chance, it's not often we do go out and, chance and situation, hey, let him sit down. What can be the worst of it? And so Neil says, yeah, all right, but just know, mate, that if you are disrespectful at all, if you can't sit there and listen or even, find your words to enjoy a conversation, then you're not staying and you can just leave, or we'll leave the table and you can stay here. And he's kind of, going, yeah, all right, no worries to be so serious, love, all right. And they're kind of like, all right, already we can see these fellas had too much to drink, have a seat, order a glass of water. And so anyway, he did. He said, yeah, all right, I'll have a glass of water. Yeah, if I can see that, I'm just having a good time. Anyways, and so, yeah, all right, mate, have a seat. Anyways, so he introduced himself and he says, yeah, my name's Derek. Myself, not from around these parts. I'm just out having a good time. I was with me mates, but, they've all packed up and gone home, as he's explained. He says, yeah, I'm not ready for the party to end yet. It's only early in the night, which it was. It was still quite early in the night. God knows if Derek was telling the truth, but Sam and Neil decided they were going to let him have a seat, join the conversation, and see what happens. And Derek's talking about his own childhood stories, surviving, a fall from the treehouse, and how that was a miraculous recovery, how he wasn't injured, and all this other stuff. Anyway, so Derek being a good storyteller, and Neil's kind of like, oh, all right, gaining a little bit of respect for this fella, and Sam's like, yeah, I told you to give him a chance. He's a pretty funny fella, and he's selling jokes, and and they're all having a good laugh and a good giggle. And as they get to know Derek, he says, yeah, I'm just a pretty lucky fella. Even on the way here, I found a bottle of gin, just next to a tree in a cooler bag. That was somebody that had left it there so they could get it when they came back from the restaurant. But anyway, yes, Derek, you found a gin bottle. So anyways, understandably, that's why he was already half cotton, as they say, or already under the influence. Anyways, the night progresses. They decide they're going to move on to another place, and he's continuing to say, oh yeah, hopefully the next place is better. I might even find some cash, because I haven't got much. And the girls are like, oh great, we're gonna have to shout this guy drinks all night, and they. Anyway, so they decide they're going to leave. Derek's pretty intoxicated already. They don't really want to be hanging out with him for the rest of the night. So they're thinking, maybe along the walk or to the next club we can shake him and get rid of him, because Yeah, like anyway, so they all leave that facility, make their way to the next one. They're walking down Main Street past all the buildings, and city's pretty lively as it is. Um, and they start walk through the garden part. The garden's pretty well lit up. Everyone's feeling pretty safe. And Derek stops and says, "Oh, hang on, girls, I just need to leak." And the girls are like, "Oh, great, oh man." So Neil stops, having a drag on her vape, and Sam's like, "Yeah, all right, man, no worries." Anyways, so Derek jumps into the bushes. Takes a few seconds. The girls are tapping their feet, going like, "Oh, come on, man, come on." And it's happened there, thinking, should we just go? And just before they do leave, Derek pops out of the bushes. And what they didn't know is what he'd found was a bum bag, and he's holding a bum bag, and they didn't know that already he had found a hotel room card and put that in his pocket straight up. He found that, went, "Oh yeah," put that in his pocket, and came out holding this bum bag up. And he says to them, "Oh, look what I just found, girls. And they're like, "Oh yeah, whatever, Derek, come on, come on." Anyway, so he's waltzing behind and he's, put this bum bag around his waist, clipped it in, and he's kind of like, "Yeah, is it cool? Like, do I look like a cool kid?" Anyways, and they kind of look back and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's pretty funny. Was it really back in the 60s, 70s, or what is it, 90s throwback tonight, Derek?" Yeah, and kind of had a laugh and a giggle about it. Didn't think much of it. Started to make their way, continued on to the next club or the next facility, as they say. Anyways, they're walking along their way. Derek's all kind of, "Oh yeah, all right, open up the bum bag and kind of looking at surprise in there. He looks down, and it's the main part of the bum bag is full of cash. Like it's like notes in there. And he's looked down and he went, "Oh, no way, no." And he goes, "Hey girls, you wouldn't believe this." And he looked down his bum bag and then he pulled out this wad of cash and he's looking at him. He's going, "Look what's in my bum bag." And they're looking at him going like, "Are you serious right now? Are you serious?" And he's put a back in the bum bag, and then he's pulled that card that was in his pocket, and he goes, "Oh, how about we take it back to my hotel room, and then we'll come back out. There's enough there to get a taxi or an Uber or whatever it is, man. We'll just go and drop it off, and then we'll come back." Put the card back in his pocket. Anyway, so the girls jumped on the phone and they're like, "Yeah, well, Derek needs to go home anyway. He's pretty pissed. Get him home. He's got some money there. Good on you, Derek, for finding it. As you said, you're a lucky man." Anyways, Uber turns up. "Oh, where are you going? Where are you going?" They've already logged it in, obviously, to the hotel that's on the card. They get back to the hotel, walk into the lobby with the card, greet it in, beep it on the thing. Congratulate, you're on level 17, room 9. So they go, "Yeah, all right, no worries." Derek stumbling about, farting in the elevator type thing. And you go, "Oh, almost there, almost there." They get out, walk up to room 09 on level 17, buzz their card, and Derek says, "Oh, hold on a sec, hold on, hold on. How about you just hold this for me?" And gives them the bum bag. He says, "You hold that, I'm just going to go into the bathroom and freshen up. Won't be a sec, just wait out here." And he's still got the card in his hand, hands in the bum bag, and then standing there in the hallway outside the room at this time. And he's like, "Don't worry, I'll be back in a sec. Don't worry, just wait there for me, wait there." And they're thinking, "All right, no worries, we'll just wait here for you, Derek. Thanks, man." Anyway, so again, they're left there waiting, and they're thinking, "Oh man, like, should we just go? We should just go. He's passed out. He obviously fell on the bed and passed out. Like, he's got the key. We're outside the room. We can't get in to help him. Yeah, let's bail." And then they're thinking, "Well, shit, I'm holding the bum bag. That's got all the money in it." And they kind of get a bit like, "What do we do? What do we do?" So knock, 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 knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock on the door. Knock, knock, knock on the door. Nothing. Nothing. They're like, "Oh, great, Derek's passed out on the bed. He's got all this money. All right, well, we know what hotel he's at. We know his name, and we know what room he's in. We'll bring it back in the morning. Whatever. Like, we don't want no part of it. We'll just bring it back." Anyways, and they back away from the door, and start walking towards the elevator and waiting for the elevator to come up because they've got no key card to buzz it down to let them know what room. The elevator opens up and this large African man, big tall African guy, walks out and kind of, a bum bag in kind of hand. She's, Neil and Sam are walking past, and I think it's Sam holding the bum bag at this point. kind of, just walked into the elevator past him, and the guy kind of, low eyebrow walked past him, and big and tall, and just kind of strutted his stuff. And then they noticed that he was heading towards Derek's room, and not thinking much of it. Elevator doors close, and they were like, "Oh wow, all right, we'll see Derek in the morning. We know what hotel room he's at. We know where he is." Yeah. So they both agreed. Yeah, fair enough. I don't want to keep the money because that'd just be, wrong. So, anyways, they now made their way down to the lobby. They're walking out, and they're making their way out. And to their left at this point, there's a nice courtyard. Up above that courtyard is where the pool is, and the pool's surrounded by the bushes and whatnot. And that is apparently directly above where Derek's room is. Straight up 17 floors is where Derek's room is. Anyway, the girls make their way down, walk past the pool, not thinking much of it. Hear a big commotion up, 17 floors. Things are smashing and falling, and they hear this commotion going on, and as their eyes kind of went up and looked at the balcony to see the commotion, they see a black blur and hear a splash, splash. And then they're looking up and they see the same black African guy now leaning over the balcony with red paint dripping down the balcony, and they're thinking, well, that's strange. He's not moving. Hang on, that's not red paint. That's not red paint. That's blood. Oh my God. And they both cup their mouth thinking, oh my God, what is that? What is that? And they're looking at it going, is that blood? That's blood now dripping down the glass of the balcony. And then, as they're glazing their eyes and blinking and kind of rubbing in disbelief, they can only, describe what can be seen as a knife, like the handle of a knife in this guy's throat, straight up into the jaw. And they're looking at it going, squinting their eyes going, is that really what that is? Like, oh my God, holding their mouth still. Little do they know that was the splash in the water was actually Derek, who had fallen over the balcony backwards, thrusting his foot into this knife that he was being threatened with on the balcony as he had gone into this African guy's room as it wasn't his own. And this African guy just happened to be a major cartel or drug dealer, whatever you say, who had ominous amounts of money and other drugs in the room that Derek was filling his pockets up with while the girls were knocking at the door. And then the guy actually came back and into the room, caused a confrontation. Derek had nowhere else to escape, made his way out onto the balcony apparently, and then was forced backwards over the balcony, and that's where his foot had gone thrust straight into this guy's knife he was holding into his hand, into his throat, as he's leaning over the balcony to still catch Derek as he's fallen now 17 floors apparently into the pool below, making this splash behind him. Anyways, the girls are to the side and they're just still in disbelief as they watch this thing down and making out what they can see is someone's died. And then flip over the fence comes Derek, all soaking wet and like drenching like a wet puppy. And he was like, well, that was pretty full on. And he's looking at him with his pockets stuffed with shit and, money, whatever else it was filling his pockets, stuffed down his pants and everywhere else he could fit it. And they're just looking at him, still cupping their mouth, going, oh my God, I was just witness to a murder, a death. Like, both looking at him going, oh my God. And, he's looking at them kind of like, where are we going next, girls? Like, that was full on. So anyway, they said, well, we're not going anywhere with you next, Derek. Here's your bum bag. We're glad you're alive, man. Here's your bum bag because we're happy to see you again. Please enjoy your life and have a good one. And turned around and walked away from Derek at that point and started to make their way back into the city to eventually make their way home. And Derek at that point, pretty much legged it and never to be seen again. Thank you very much for listening, ladies and gentlemen. As always, leave feedback, whatever you wish. Thank you very much.